Alright, we'll get underway. It's past 6 o'clock, we've got a bit to get through. So welcome everyone, thanks for coming along. Obviously a bit of interest here in rail and housing and all the things that go with it. So really good to see the numbers along here. Welcome back to those who've been to previous Chat Club workshops. We've certainly had a few this year. I'm Glenn Curry, for those who don't know. I'm part of the Chat Club group. I'm going to be sort of leading through the introduction of tonight's workshop and sort of stringing together the various other contributors to tonight's sessions. Just a bit of background for those who aren't aware. Chat Club stands for Canterbury Housing and Transport. The aim is really to provide discussions about all manner of issues in the Greater Christchurch area at least, about what we do in terms of future of transport, future of housing, land use changes in general there. We do this through a number of ways, obviously through these workshops here, but we also have a Facebook discussion group as well that's open for anyone to add contributions to there as well. And we also have a couple of websites that we discuss those topics as well. Chris leads the Talking Transport website, and Brendan has a lot of articles via Medium as well. So very much sort of transport and housing, and we sort of link them together a bit as well. So lots of good stuff if you haven't already had a look there. We are happy for you guys to sign up to our mail group as well. So if you want to know about future events, we've got a mailing list. There's a link there. If you can't remember it now, just go and have a look at the presentations later on and you'll see the link there. Sign up, you'll get on our Chat Club MailChimp list and we'll let you know about any events coming through. These things don't come entirely cheap. This facility is a fantastic one, but we do have to pay a few dollars for this, so we're always open to anyone who wants to give a little donation or two as well. There's a tin at the back there where if you've got cold hard cash, we've got a little kitty tin at the back. You're welcome to throw a few coins in there. There it is, thank you.
PayPal does some work as well.
And we also now have a give a little page as well. So if you want to do things electronically, we're happy for any contributions there. And that helps pay towards the costs of having these events every month or so, basically. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already done so, get your phones and put them on silent or vibrate, which I'm going to do as well. Go. Exits. You'll see a green sign at the back there. There's also one there. Those stairs at the back, they lead out there. Otherwise, you go down the main stairs, and I believe we assemble out there near the Cathedral Square if there's any event. And if you're busting and need to go at some point, the toilets are sort of back the way you came through, and off to that side there, you'll find the ladies and gents as well. Okay, this is the program for tonight. I've got a few things to cover. Firstly, I'm just going to provide a little bit of a recap of what we've gone through in the last few workshops for the Chat Club. For those who haven't been there or perhaps missed a workshop or two, we'll sort of just a few slides give you a bit of a rundown of what we talked about there. Then Axel Wilkie's going to introduce the vision of MARTI and what we're trying to talk about here today. What do we think it's about? What's the mission of this exercise here? And then Brendan Harray will introduce, I guess, the why question. What's the background to this proposal and how it got developed from there. At that point, we want to get a little bit of feedback, so we're going to do a little bit of interactive exercise and get some group discussions. Then we're going to have a bit of a panel discussion. So we've got three speakers who are going to be talking about the different aspects of transport, master planning and governance for the MARTI proposal. So you'll hear from three speakers, they'll tell you sort of some thoughts about that, and then again we'll be inviting some feedback from you in terms of what do you think about that, and open it up for some questions for the panel as well. That'll take us towards the end there. Okay, we'll sort of go through 7:30 with that and wrap up and let you know what's coming after that. Okay. Okay, so throughout the night we're going to use Menti as an interactive tool to get some feedback from you. So if you've got your smartphone, it's pretty easy. We'll just go to the website there, menti.com, and it'll ask you to type in a code number. Now we've actually got three different quizzes tonight, so you're going to have three different codes to do. But one you can do throughout the night is if you've got any feedback about the workshop in general, you can use this one here, 69 44 44. If you can't remember that, you might want to jot it down or something because it will disappear. And this is just a free form one, so if you've got any suggestions, any thoughts, any questions, what you'd like to see more, you can just type in a few words, submit, and it goes into our list of feedback from the workshops. Okay, and it's always great to see the feedback that we get each time we run one of these, and good suggestions for what to do next as well. Okay, so that's the first one, and as I say, that's kind of running all night. We'll give you a reminder at the end of the night as well, once you've had a chance to think about how you found the evening. And we've got a couple of other exercises in the middle there as well to do using MARTI. Okay, let me start by just going back and covering a bit of what we've done in some of the previous workshops. So since, what was it, the end of January I think was the first workshop we've done, we've ran 5 workshops looking at this whole question of rapid transit, rail, passenger transport in Greater Christchurch, and how it links with what we should be doing with land use and housing as well. Okay, and certainly I see some familiar faces from some of you who came along to some of those events there. So, some of you might recall after we started with a bit of a map drawing exercise early on, and we took that feedback and we developed some concepts for some routes. In January we were looking at routes out to the north and out to the southwest, as well as some within the city as well, sort of out to the northwest and southwest there. A variety of different options in terms of whether it might be heavy rail, light rail, bus rapid transit. Really trying to cover the possible mode options and also how they might link with the different land use, both existing land use, but also where you could potentially develop some more land use as well. Okay. And we had a bit of a feedback form, I think it was about workshop 4, where we got some feedback from the audience to sort of work out what they thought of those different options as well. From that, we got people to rate these 6 options against some key outcomes. So things that we're aiming for, like reliable travel times or better sustainable outcomes and so forth. How important were they each, and then how well did you think each of those options provided for those outcomes there? And from that we came up with a bit of a weighted score. So the big numbers at the bottom, you can see some did better than others in terms of how we felt they ticked more boxes than others, both in terms of, I guess, short-term goals, things like I just want to get to work on time, to the longer-term goals like I actually like the planet to be around for a while as well. So we tried to capture all of that in those different options there. 4, I guess, in particular seem to jump up as being more promising than the other ones. So from that, I'll just kick through these here, we did a bit of costing exercise, trying to work out, well, what kind of money are we talking about to implement each of these options here. And there was a bit of calculation, both what it might cost upfront and then also the ongoing running costs. And to keep things simple, we turned it into an annualised cost. So if you had to sort of buy a loan and pay it back, what would be the annual cost for it? And so you can see those numbers there in the middle compared against the ratings that we had on the right hand side. So we were starting to see some options that looked like they were quite pricey for the relative amount of outcome and benefit that you might get for them, and perhaps other options seem to be far more cost effective from there. And then finally at the last workshop we looked at the question of, okay, well that's all very nice and well, but how do we pay for all that? That's still quite a few dollars. And so we presented a few different options of how possibly these things could be funded. And some of them are quite traditional, like the money we get from Land Transport Program or rates. Some of them are a bit more creative, the things that we could be doing in terms of raising various charges or introducing new levies, or quite clever things like doing value capture of the new developments as well. And again, trying to work out sort of how many dollars per year possibly you could raise from those, and I think we were trying to be quite conservative as well. And then if you look at that and match it against the options, certainly the conclusion I think we got from the last workshop was that there's a lot of potential to fund a lot of these options through some of these. If people are happy to sort of push up some dollars or introduce some new costs, there's a lot of different ways we could do it. Okay? So that's really just a quick summary of what we came up with in the last few workshops, and it was really looking at that big picture. But what we want to do now is sort of focus more on one example of how this bigger vision could possibly come through. So the total cost here, 140 million, possibly we could raise if all of those were kicked in. So what I want to do now is hand over to Dr. Wilkie, and he will talk about the vision of what is MARTI. And you may notice you've got on your tables there some sheets which give you a bit of a summary as well. Thank you, Axel.
Thank you, Glenn. Kia ora koutou from me. My name is Axel, as Glenn said, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to MARTI, the Middleton and Rolleston Transformation Initiative. So, big picture, MARTI has 3 components. The first one is we wanting to use this initiative to get passenger rail going in Greater Christchurch once more on a route from Rolleston to the city. The second component is that we establish a new logistics hub in or near Rolleston. And the third component is that we have a master planned residential development in Middleton, where the current rail yard is of PV rail. So the green is the passenger rail proposal. Here's the current rail yard that we propose to become housing, and we'll shift that somewhere to closer to Rolleston. And so the vision, as we've got it, to create an exemplar neighbourhood in Christchurch at the Middleton rail yards with a passenger rail transport hub at the heart of the development, where residents can take pride in their livable, walkable, connected communities and help fulfill the Region Zero carbon goals. So what does that mean? So firstly, exemplar neighbourhoods. We haven't done anything like this before in our city. Middleton rail yards, that's the location that we've picked. Passenger rail transport hub, there's two visions in one. It involves the reintroduction of passenger rail for Greater Christchurch, and we envisage the station to become a key activity centre, the station in Middleton. Livable, walkable, connected, that's a master planned community which can be incredibly successful. If you were here when Mark Fraser talked about Hobsonville in one of the previous workshops, that is what we are thinking of. And then lastly, zero carbon. It is a development where much of the travel generated by it can happen by walking, cycling or public transport, but also in a wider sense, where through this development approach, if we get this off the ground and this really works well, this would also put a damper on further urban sprawl, because this can deliver livable, attractive neighbourhoods cheaper than the conventional subdivisions that we build out in the box. So where's Middleton? You may not be familiar with the rail yard, where it's actually located. So on this map, it shows you where it is, and you get a feeling for its size. It's quite sizable, not too far away from Rickton Mall, not too far away from Tower Junction, and reasonably close to the central city, really. So how we go about this is we bring together agencies and communities who all have a stake in our regional rail system, public transportation, housing, and urban development, neighbourhood development. And we want to bring those stakeholders together around a shared vision that includes where public transport hubs service those rail hubs, where new sustainable development is centered around those rail stations, and where we have high quality, affordable homes within an easy walk or a bike ride from those stations. And so by doing so, create landmark destinations along the Rolleston to Christchurch passenger rail service. And I now hand you over to Brendan.
Thank you. Hi everybody, it's my job tonight to talk about the why of MARTI. For a while now I've been thinking that Christchurch is an apple, becoming a banana, but it needs to be a hand. I'll explain what I mean by that. The official spatial plan for Greater Christchurch is for it to become a banana. 55% of future growth is planned to be outside the apple and inside the banana. A group of us believed that Christchurch could do better than that. We got to work, formed the chat club, had discussions, wrote articles, had public meetings with the likes of you good folk. We did some workshops. The result of those workshops was strong support for integrating housing and rapid transit on rail corridors. The two most favoured rapid transit corridors was the existing rail corridors going north and southwest. The next favoured corridor was light rail down Lincoln Road to Rolleston. A line out to the airport via Riccarton University was also popular. Conceptually, to me, these spatial plan preferences looked like a cartoon hand, so as you can see, that's what I drew. Providing rapid transit using existing heavy rail corridors and light rail street corridors is technically possible. Here are some pictures from Karlsruhe, Germany, depicting exactly that. Heavy rail on the left, light rail on the right, and the same tram train vehicle using both corridors. Note, Karlsruhe had the same problem as Christchurch, that the original rail corridor did not connect with the city centre. Karlsruhe fixed this in 1992. Christchurch's hand was also inspired by Copenhagen's very successful five-finger spatial plan. Many of you will be aware of how successful Copenhagen has been in creating a cycling city, an environmental city, and a successful productive city. MARTI can be Christchurch's first step towards building the hand. MARTI has three main benefits. It can benefit inequality, productivity, and the environment. When I grew up in the 1970s and 80s, modest 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom homes with an external garage was the norm. Since then, New Zealand housing has become too focused on producing large, high-end houses. This is the meaning of this graph. New subdivisions have private covenants which prevent smaller entry-level housing being built. We see them sprawling around Christchurch, Prestons, Longhurst, Barrington, etc. In these subdivisions, where are the modest entry-level homes? Where are the terrace and townhouses that are 120 square metres? Where are the 60 to 80 square metre apartments? There aren't many. Middleton can be different. Homes can be fairer. Middleton can be master planned not for the top of the market, but for the middle, with different housing typologies, townhouses, terraced housing, apartments, with different ownership and tenure types. Build to rent, rent to buy, state housing, public housing provider housing, affordable owner-occupied housing. The range designed to satisfy the different segments of demand that the market and public housing is currently missing. If Middleton builds lower valued houses, will it be a lower valued suburb? Not at all. And the secret is density done well. Chat Club attendees will remember the talk given by Mark Fraser from HLC, who was part of the team that master planned Hobsonville Point in Auckland. Hobsonville, as shown, has densities of up to 100 houses per hectare, which is 5 times greater than a typical Christchurch subdivision. It is this density, the large number of ratepayers in a small amount of space, that can pay for high-value public amenities, not least contributing towards the cost of building a tram train network. The success of Middleton will in large part be determined by learning how to do density done well. It is about building a community, master planning and placemaking. The next speaker will explain further. I moved back to Christchurch in 2012 after selling a 2-bedroom Helsinki apartment that was yards away from Tumarula train station. It was a fantastic apartment, walls with this thick, high ceilings, triple glazing, central heating, hourly ventilation and air exchange. The picture on the screen shows a view from the platform of Tumarula station. My old apartment had a very similar view. All the apartments that you can see on the screen were built between 2006 and 2012. And they are only about 10% of the housing built in the suburb of Tumarula at that time. We sold our apartment for the market price of $300,000 New Zealand. Finland can build to this price and quality because they build whole suburbs of medium density housing around good public transport. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect. The rail model is popular and common overseas. Another inspiration for the MARTI proposal is Barnstadt, a 5,000 passive home development on an old rail shunting yard in Heidelberg, Germany. New Zealand can learn this integrated housing and rail model too. In Christchurch we can start learning at Middleton. Edward Glaser, the economist and author of Triumph of the City, says that cities are the absence of space between people. What he means by this is that people get enormous benefits from co-locating together. They share ideas, they organise, they work, they shop, they play, they search for partners, have families and so on. Economists boringly label these benefits productivity or agglomeration because this type of productivity is about people interacting with people. I'm going to call it accessing the people. Cities can and frequently do have a dark side though. Their attractiveness and closeness makes them susceptible to problems. Problems such as disease, crime, unaffordable housing and congestion. Historically, when people move to the city, they risk catching some pox and dying. Obviously, this discouraged moving to the city to access the people. Fortunately, modern sanitation fixes this problem. Christchurch's dark side is a very high dependence on the private motor vehicle. Motor vehicles are expensive, and increasingly, as Christchurch becomes the banana, the only transport option is the car. PricewaterhouseCoopers Cities Institute found when they studied Australasian cities that for Christchurch, the median household now spends $83 more per week on transport than in 2008, equal to approximately half all real gains in income growth for Christchurch over that period. I know that economic statements like this for the layperson can be hard to interpret. Basically it means rising transport costs are an impediment for accessing the people, much like poor sanitation impeded cities in our forefathers' day. MARTI would give newcomers attracted to Christchurch more affordable options because it's centrally located and part of a growing rapid transit network. Environmentally too, Christchurch has a problem with dependence on car ownership and driving. The resulting CO2 emissions are arguably our biggest environmental disaster. The numbers are worse than other major cities of New Zealand. Our red line of kilometres driven is going up, and Auckland's and Wellington's blue and yellow lines are going down. It is a fact that Canterbury's car dependency statistics are worse than the United States. If declaring that Canterbury and Christchurch is in a climate emergency is to be meaningful, we need to act on transport. Chat Club organisers believe that people do not want to harm the environment. that if the people are given genuine choice, they will choose the less environmentally damaging options. Auckland per capita is investing in public transport at 5 to 6 times the rate of Canterbury. This is having a dramatic effect. Aucklanders own less cars, drive shorter distances, and make more multimodal transport choices. The days of Auckland being solely a motorway city is passing. There's plenty of evidence in New Zealand and overseas that when good quality public transport is provided, people use it. We believe the people of Christchurch are starved of this freedom. This choice should be delivered. We believe MARTI can provide this option. In conclusion, Christchurch the apple doesn't have to become a banana. It can become a hand because homes can be fairer, accessing the people can be more affordable, and the people can be free not to harm the environment. Thank you for listening to my talk on why MARTI.
All right, thank you, Brendan and Axel. So that sort of sets a little bit of scene of why we think it's important to do this. So now we want to take a bit of a break and listen to us and get you to have a bit of a think about what you've heard so far before we get into a bit more of the details. So we've got a little bit of an exercise for you. And you sort of had a little bit of a chat in your tables for a couple of minutes, but it's actually an individual here. So what we want you to do is to fire up Menti. All right, so if you've got your smartphone, remember there's free Wi-Fi here in the library too if you don't want to spend your dollars. And go to, in this case, the code number 207426. And we've got 3 questions. Okay, the first one is in a few words, and you've got up to 3 words you can put in. What does a sustainable new community mean to you? Okay, so think of 3 important things there. Put them in. We'll see what kind of word cloud we get from everyone putting in contributions there. And then the next 2 questions, you've only got 1 answer there. So we're interested in who do you think has the most influence on delivering change in integrated housing and transport developments in Christchurch? Okay, so which authority, agency, group, party? Is it a certain organisation? Is it the general public? Is it developers? Who? You know, come up with something there. And then question 3, same thing. Who has the most to gain from delivering the new urban communities focused around transport hubs? Maybe it's the public, maybe it's the people who develop these things, maybe it's the communities or the councils. Again, have a think about that and put in your answers for question 3 there as well. So we'll give you about 5 minutes or so to perhaps just have a chat on the tables, have some thoughts, and then put in those answers, and then I'll pop up some word clouds and see what people came up with, okay? And then we'll move on.
Maybe that's when it should be a bit easier to see the slides, so the notes and everything. Yeah.
Who comes up with? Right, who's got the most influence to make this happen? Council, each and all councillors? You and government, apparently.
Someone like filter.
Oh, Leanne, you can get your own name in there as well. And Bill Twice gets his name too. Axel, you're in there too. You've got to do something too, apparently. All right, but I think definitely there's a sentiment there that between local government and central government, got to work together and make a lot of this happen. And then you've got other players like developers, Kiwi Rail and so forth that also got to come to the party as well. Okay? Good to see. Right, and the last question, I'll put it in People like it afterwards. Let's see what the word for is. Who's going to benefit out of all this? Interesting, the developers are going to make nice money out of this. But community and communities, collectively, there's a lot there, and people and citizens. So I think a lot of people there, different words, but they're all saying in theory this should be benefiting you individually and you as a community as well. Okay? That's what you'd hope would be the aim of the exercise anyway. Okay. Interesting. Just arrange it. It's the first time we've tried to use Google Slides for this, which doesn't help either. So. Anyone wants to go to Copenhagen? Okay. Thank you very much for that. That was really good feedback. All right. What we're going to do now is have three panel presenters. So we're going to have Axel again, we've got Hugh Nicholson, and we've got Brendan again as well, who are each going to spend about 5 to 10 minutes just to sort of paint the picture of what we're envisaging with MARTI. And then we're going to have the opportunity again for you to provide some feedback and some questions to them as well. So get your thinking caps on from that. Over to you, Axel.
Thank you, Glenn. So I'm going to talk on transport, and I wanted to start off with some myth-busting, because you quite often hear when it comes to rapid transit that Christchurch is either too small or too spread out for for rapid transit to really work. But the reality is quite different. By now, we are the largest city anywhere in Australasia where there isn't a rapid transit system in place. Other places that recently started with their rapid transit, there was the Gold Coast in 2014 for the Commonwealth Games. Now they are a little bit bigger than us, population-wise, but the two places that started their tram systems earlier this year, Newcastle and Canberra, they are both smaller than us. So we are the last one standing without a rapid transit system. It's got to change. With regards to passenger rail, what we envisage is a staged reintroduction of this mass rapid transit system, where what MARTI provides, the link from Rolleston to Christchurch, is just stage one. We want to see how this works. We want to give people options for traveling that are reliable and cause low emissions. We want to have key activity centres created around the railway stations, where we've got dense housing combined with retail and offices and maybe even education providers. So the route that we envisage is for Rolleston to be the western terminus, and the eastern terminus would be on the Middleton line at Colombo Street, where people can exchange onto buses that go over the bridge one level up. And obviously we would provide intermittent stations as needed. So for example, that might be Islington, definitely Hornby, Middleton is quite a key station, but there may also be others. So as Brandon has already hinted, what we are thinking of is having tram trains. We should start even with this stage 1 with tram trains. They are lighter vehicles, basically a tram. But they can operate on heavy rail lines as well as on suburban lines. Because ultimately, tram trains can go where people want to be. So the model for this was first tried out in Germany in 1992, and it's named after the place where it got invented, so to speak. And much like Karlsruhe, we have a lot of heavy rail network that we can make use of with our tram train system, so it's easy and cheap to get started. We then have the option to extend the rail network through the city centre. And the stops that I would envisage could come as stage 2 or stage 3, however we want to stage this, could be that the tram train veers off to the left, to the north, and stops at the new stadium, at the bus interchange, at the hospital, and then on event days at Hagley Oval. And it's much cheaper to build those tram lines than heavy rail lines, because the vehicles are so much lighter, and because the vehicles are lighter and more compact, they're also more appropriate for an inner city setting. So systems like these that have been around since '92 have been implemented all over the world since. And then I'd like to touch on freight. The Middleton rail yard is running out of capacity. At least that is what it says in a 2014 report that was commissioned with the future of freight for Christchurch is the topic. Now I've since talked to Kiwi Rail and their development manager. She tells me that it's not true. I have never heard anything about Middleton running out of capacity. And so you will read more about that in the press tomorrow. But we see this as part of something as much of a much bigger discussion, all of this. So because what has happened in the last few years is that much of the freight exchange that happens in Greater Christchurch has moved out to Rolleston, to the industrial subdivision that Selwyn District Council has built, known as I-Zone. And so, for example, the two large South Island ports, they have both established themselves with container terminals in I-Zones, and they're calling them inland ports. So Timaru Port, which is half owned by Tauranga Port, they did that in 2015, and a year later, in June 2016, Middleton Port emulated this. And so the photo that you see there is an aerial photo of the Middleton Inland Port shortly after its opening in 2016. That's why there weren't that many containers there at that point in time. So the Rolleston, the railway yard that we see moving towards Rolleston, that can basically go anywhere along the red line. So here's Rolleston here, there's Hornby there, could go anywhere along there. The land, most of that land, is within the airport noise zone. So this is indicated by the magenta dots here. You can't have any residential development within the noise zone, but you can have industrial uses like a rail yard. So it would make sense for the PV rails facility to move out there where much of the other freight exchange is already happening. And I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Axel. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Hugh Nicholson, so I'm an urban designer working in Christchurch. Look, the chat club sort of came to me and asked me to help sort of visualising what MARTI might look like, you know, what the residential component of it might look like if it went ahead. Just to work. Wrong way. And really, it kills three birds with one stone. You know, it supports intensification. It helps to meet our targets under LURP and the UDS, the Urban Development Strategy. It supports a new Rolleston to City to Rolleston passenger rail corridor. And most importantly, it's a kind of catalyst for further development. A single development along a rail corridor is probably not enough to make it work. But an example, a catalyst of how it might work, means that we might see more of the kind of low-value industrial and commercial land along Glen Road corridor, you know, start moving to residential use in the long term. So I see that as a really important kind of stepping stone on the journey. And finally, maybe it's a model for what sustainable development looks like. And I think we're still really struggling to figure out what it looks like in the city. I have to confess that when you know, Chat came to me and said, you know, this Middleton, I said, where the hell's that? What is it? Well, it's obviously it's on the it's shown here on the I'll just get this on the red outline. When you look at it in terms of context of the city, it's actually remarkably central. There's obviously Hagley Park in the middle of the image, the central city just to the right of that, so it's pretty close. You'll see Napunawai down on the bottom left. Rookerton Mall is the area just in here, and universities up here. But really, it's a remarkably central kind of location for quite a large bit of land, 26 hectares. So I kind of thought, I guess I'd view these more as potential principles. I don't see this as a design. I've just come up with some ideas to talk to you about. And really, and the other thing, you know, we should remember, this is an industrial site. It's got a set of high voltage power lines running on the northern side of it, which I'll show you in a minute. And it's probably got site contamination, so I shouldn't kind of kid you that this is necessarily an easy job. We just think it might be worthwhile. So when you look at the site, yeah, the high voltage power lines basically run along the northern side of it. And look, you know, out of every problem, that's an opportunity. To my feeling is they need to be underground, and out of that you create a green corridor running along the northern side of that site. Look, that's not necessarily cheap, but you know, if you're spreading that over the value of 1,000 houses, and you know, it's more manageable. And look, that's the amenity on the northern side, the open space, which provides you know, a quality of life for people living there. Then you've got to think, well, how do I connect this into the rest of the city? What's the obvious way to do it? Obviously, there's an east-west connection between Annex Road and Metapo Street. You think that sort of becomes the spine of the development. That's kind of how you orient it. That's where you get access to it. And potentially, there's a north-south connection, I think, between Birmingham Drive and up towards Blenheim Road and then onto the university. I mean, I just think where exactly that would run, I'm not sure. But I just think, and maybe it's only pedestrian and cycle, but maybe it's vehicle as well. But it just gives a whole new opportunity and access to a new railway station. And obviously, I mean, the rail, you know, corridor is, you know, at the heart of this. You can see just proposing a new, perhaps there's a new railway station here. Realign the railway line through here. And obviously, you're on that north-south, potential north-south connection as well. So giving good access there. And flowing on from that, I'm thinking, well, there's probably some commercial opportunities, particularly along, you know, adjacent to a new railway station. Thinking it may not look exactly like that, it might not be exactly that location, but surely, you know, you've got a new railway station, you've got some commercial opportunities growing out of that. And similarly, along Metapo Street, you know, you've got the potential, you know, to maximise the value of that land with the frontage onto and the traffic. And then that kind of leaves you with a kind of a fine-grained kind of residential space for a fine-grained residential development. And look, you know, those blocks are perhaps 100 metres square, you know, but look, whether it works exactly like that or differently, it needs some pocket parks, it needs some quality of life, but maybe that's, you know, something, you know, that, you know, gives you an idea about how that land could be used. How much? How many dwellings? Everybody asked me. Well, I kind of look, you know, you've got quite a lot of infrastructure there, so I'm sort of, you know, say there's 16 hectares left out of the 26 hectares by the time we've, you know, we've put in the, you know, the road, obviously got railway lines and the high voltage power lines. You know, at 65 dwellings a hectare, you know, we get 1,000 dwellings. At 100 dwellings a hectare, you know, we get 1,600 dwellings. So, I mean, those are just figures. So I'll just show you what that looks like in real terms. These are just examples with the density of similar densities in other places, you know, around Australasia. So Rintoul Street in Wellington, that's you know, that's a set of terrace houses. They're hitting 69 dwellings a hectare. That's on, I think it's on a 1 hectare site they've managed to do. They've hit that density. It's attractive. That actually is the community space in the middle of it. Again, you know, a key part of this is providing high quality public spaces. It's not just about providing houses. It's about making it a desirable place to live. The Beaumont Quarter of Auckland is a combination of terraces, apartments, and a refurbished heritage building and things. They're hitting around 100 dwellings a hectare. They're across the road at Victoria Park, so obviously they benefit from some amenity there. But as you can see, that's another one. That's certainly you've got a little bit of a community space in the centre, just off in the bottom left, and you know, terraces and so on. And Redfern in Sydney is 110 dwellings a hectare. I just put in these elevations because I thought it was interesting. They're effectively a combination of terraces and apartments, but between 2 and 4 stories. So that's what it takes. That's what 110 dwellings a hectare looks like. I think most of their parking is on the street. They've got, I don't think they, Redfern is it's a social housing development. So, but maybe that's the kind of model we need to look at. And I guess, and how do people feel about it? It's really interesting. So the recent kind of studies from Auckland are showing that actually in Hobsonville Point, residents are reporting quite strong, levels of satisfaction. So they're actually enjoying it. The sense of community and the kind of environment they're creating, it's working for the people who are living there. It's not for everybody. I kind of say to people, this isn't a replacement for suburbia. This is just an alternative. That's all we're trying to create. So what is it that makes a livable neighbourhood? And I guess the first thing, accessibility is really important. It's easy to get to and from it, and you've got an option, you've got cycle, passenger, walking options. That's part of making a livable community. If it's close to employment, if it's close to amenities, it's going to be a better place to live. If it's got green spaces and high quality streets, it's going to be a more livable place. We think energy efficient and affordable houses are actually a key part of this. Look, it's easy to make livable neighbourhoods if you've got a lot of money. We know that, but actually, we think the big challenge is making energy efficient and affordable houses. And we think that a sense of community and a sense of safety are really key elements. One of the things about this bit of land is that Hobsonville Point's, got sea all around it, so it's a really beautiful spot. So what's this bit of land got to offer that, that would make it a desirable place? And I guess, I'm kind of thinking, when I'm looking at my children and how they respond, what they're really interested in is sustainability, the zero carbon, the climate emergency. They're big things for them. And could this be, our first kind of net zero carbon development? But that's the kind of way, I guess, that I'm thinking it might work. Now, I've got a little short video, which is about a development, a passive house development in Germany, which it's got some, it's a little bit quirky, and I hope we can get this to run. Glenn's just performing miracles.
people started moving into Heidelberg's Bahnstadt district in 2012, and already some 3,400 people are living there, including many young families and students. With 4 kindergartens, an elementary school, and 2 student residences, the district is tailored to their needs. All the buildings have been built to passive house standards and are supplied with district heating. In 2014 and 15, the city commissioned scientists to calculate energy consumption, and the conclusions they reached were positive. The predicted heat savings had been achieved.
Wir brauchen nur 1/10 der Energie. Also in einem üblichen Altbau können Sie 150 Kilowattstunden verbrauchen. Wir brauchen 15 in einem Passivhaus. Lassen Sie es 17 oder 20 sein. Also der Faktor 10, Faktor 8 ist großartig. Wenn man die Gesamtverbrauch anguckt von einem Gebäude, sind wir etwa bei 1/3. Sprich mit allen Verteilverlusten in diesem Fall, mit Warmwassererzeugung, mit Speicherverlusten, da sind wir immer noch mit 1/3 dabei, also 2/3 Einsparung.
The new inhabitants of the district are coping well with low-impact living. In a recent survey, 2/3 were satisfied or highly satisfied. The comprehensively insulated houses hardly require any heating at all. When the sun is strong, they can even become too hot.
Sie müssen im Sommer verschatten. Wir haben das große Glück, dass wir zur Südseite diese verstellbaren Lamellen haben. Das heißt, man muss die Räume nicht dunkel machen und hat trotzdem Sonnenschutz. Aber es ist tatsächlich so, wenn man das mal vergisst, das rächt sich. Oder wenn man in den Urlaub fährt zur Sommerperiode und seine Nachbarn nicht bittet, man kann nicht 2-3 Wochen im Hochsommer es offen lassen. Das geht tatsächlich nicht.
The national and international media are fascinated by people's experience with what is the world's biggest passive house residential district. The demand from potential buyers and tenants has exceeded all expectations.
Wir sind weit vor den Zeitplänen, weil sich die Häuser gut verkaufen und gut vermieten lassen. Der erste Bauabschnitt ist fertig, der zweite auch. Wir werden dieses Jahr im Sommer auch die Schule eröffnen und wir planen sogar schon den dritten Bauabschnitt. Die Wettbewerbe sind da auch schon abgeschlossen.
One day, 5,500 people will live in the Bahnstadt. The homes have been built, and next on the list are the cinema, shopping center, sports hall, hotel, and retail premises. Urban life in the new district will develop, step by step, up to the year 2022.
Right, thank you. I'll pass over to Brendan.
If my last talk was about the why of MARTI, I suppose this talk is about the how of MARTI. This is such a big question. I can only really cover a few high-level concepts. Broadly, I'd like to say that the most important issue is having a clear vision that a team of stakeholders fully support. If these conditions are met, then the funding will follow. That has been the experience in Wellington with Let's Get Welly Moving. Strong advocacy and support unlocked $2.2 billion of funding for rapid transit from the city to the airport. That's the reason tonight we've focused so strongly on presenting a vision. The why question is more important than the how. If the why is strong, then some way or another a solution will be found. So having made that caveat, what are our how to do it options? What governance structure best brings all the relevant stakeholders together? The Chat Club has discussed governance options before. The transport governance options include the existing setup of a joint committee of ECAN, the City Council, Waimea and Selwyn councils. There's an NZTA observer, and Kiwi Rail is not included. Alternatively, transport functions could be delegated to one local authority. There could be a Greater Christchurch Transport Authority or a unitary authority. A problem with all these transport governance options is that transport and land use should be considered together. What about land use and housing governance options then? The first option of a Greater Christchurch partnership is too big and unwieldy, in my opinion. The second option, which is the Housing and Urban Development Authority, lacks local stakeholder interest and lacks the ability to fit a specific transport plus housing project into a long-term citywide spatial plan. So I'm going to describe another option. NZTA has set up a new committee called the Future of Rail. Its task is to investigate two broad goals: assisting high-growth cities with transport, settlement patterns, CO2 emissions and congestion, and secondly, to efficiently manage transport freight. The government has recently given Kiwi Rail $1 billion, so it's in a better position to work towards meeting those goals. Auckland and Wellington have representation on this committee. At the moment, Canterbury does not. It needs to be there. Kiwi Rail and its rail corridors in Canterbury need to be part of the conversation about what is the best spatial plan for Greater Christchurch. We at Chat Club believe we have achieved the right balance with our MARTI and hand proposals between road, rail for passengers and rail for freight. But it's appropriate that this issue is decided at a higher governance level. This is because the highest order question with respect to city building is the allocation of public and private corridors and spaces. The market cannot do this. The only governments can determine a city's spatial plan. It is important this is done at a high level so all the relevant parties are aligned. So if that's the high-level governance structure, how is MARTI implemented locally? To develop MARTI, something like Hobsonville Land Company or HLC will be needed. Let's call it the MARTI Development Corporation. HLC is 100% owned subsidiary of Housing New Zealand that is coming under the new Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. The MARTI Development Corporation could also be a 100% owned subsidiary of this new ministry. This would give MARTI Development Corporation access to planners, infrastructure experts, landscape architects, etc. in the ministry's Housing and Urban Development Authority. Like HLC, the MARTI Development Corporation could be responsible for master planning the site, providing the basic infrastructure like water and waste, then tendering out residential or commercial blocks for different commercial builders such as Naitahu Property, Williams Corporation, and to public builders such as Housing New Zealand, and they would complete those blocks. The MARTI Development Corporation would have the ability to borrow money and to repay it back via land sales and targeted rates. The MARTI Development Corporation would have an independent local board structure. The Mayor, Leanne Dozell, has talked about this in the past in relationship to the rebuilt entities. It is international best practice. I've been informed by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development that they intend to use local boards to manage their big housing projects. There will be representation from all the major stakeholders involved in that particular project, whether that's iwi, council, government departments, maybe private sector if there's particular landholders. In our case, Ngāi Tahu may want to be involved in MARTI. We've sent them a copy of our report. They've confirmed that they have first right of refusal on the sale of the Middleton rail yards. And it would also be appropriate to have their involvement from a Treaty of Waitangi perspective. The public transport components of MARTI and in the future the hand projects will require cost-sharing agreements between central and local government. Detailed business cases will be needed. The practice is that up to 50% of the funding comes from local sources. Reinstalling passenger rail on existing tracks in Greater Christchurch might cost something like 400 million. A tram train inner-city loop and lines out to Hallsville in the airport may be 2 billion. This may seem like big numbers, but this is comparable per capita to the sort of transport projects Auckland and Wellington are getting. New residents who move to Middleton will be indicating they want to live in a transit-orientated neighbourhood. At Chat Club, we estimate that could be worth $50,000 per household. And we also estimate that's about the upper limit you could add to land prices per dwelling, or the equivalent charged as an ongoing targeted rate, whilst keeping housing affordable. The mass of this funding indicates Middleton could generate $80 million towards the local share of rapid transit funding. It would be hard, probably politically impossible, to generate this level of funding from existing ratepayers. The MARTI model will also assist the funding of rapid transit because it will, when completed, have lots more residents that are within walkable distance of train stations compared to existing Christchurch suburbs. So a lot more passenger fare revenue will be generated. Therefore, the more MARTIs Christchurch can build, the more viable rapid transit provision becomes. That's about all the time I've got to discuss governance and delivery issues. Thank you for listening to our presentations, and we'll be very interested in the feedback.
Okay, so that sort of paints the picture. It's still at a fairly high level, obviously, but of what's being suggested here. And so now, really, for the rest of the session, we're keen to get some feedback. And there's 2 steps to this. So again, we've got a little bit of a Menti exercise, Menti. Different number here. If you go to menti.com, 25 55 32, there's 2 bits to this. And again, have a bit of a chat amongst your groups in the next wee while. And I'd invite the speakers to perhaps go around and have a chat as well. Firstly, we're interested in any ideas you can think of how we could actually promote this proposal, actually make it work as well. So you've got a bit of an open form there to type a few thoughts in on that, and we'll see what comes up there. And then the next bit is an opportunity for you to ask questions of the presenters. Okay, so again, you've got an open form there to ask a question. You can ask away multiple questions, I believe, should be from there. Once we've given 5 or so minutes for people to do that, we'll start then seeing what we've got, and we'll get the presenters up and we'll go through some of the questions and see what responses we've got. Okay, but for now, have a chat amongst yourselves on your tables, and then start putting in some thoughts. Okay. We're seeing lots of good ideas and actions for how we can promote the proposal. Starting to see a few questions for the presenters as well. Keep them coming. Okay, we're going to bring up the three presenters to answer some questions. I'll just firstly having a quick look through some of the suggestions for ideas and actions to promote this further. Bring the community along, or figure out the local interests as well. More public meetings, more social media, so get more people engaged and talking, so that's good, which is tied in with also more publicity as well, getting more backing from influential people, council developers and so forth as well. I do like the one with the money question. Rob a bank, a very big bank. Maybe that's an option too. Yeah, the Reserve Bank. We'll work the Reserve Bank. Yep, a lot of media engagement, community engagement, I'm seeing a lot of that, and it's getting the key parties together. So obviously you've got to get central government support and funding, got to engage partnerships with the key players, Ngāi Tahu, Kiwi Rail obviously being willing to sell as well, or the government suggesting they should sell, can work either way. All sorts of options. Okay. So thanks for that, lots of good ideas still coming through there. Now if I flick over to the questions, I've got half a dozen questions, and to be honest we might be struggling to do more in the time anyway, but feel free to throw something else in here. So I'm just going to pull up a question, and these guys can work out amongst themselves who's going to respond, or even all of them as well. So let's see, well the first one perhaps related to what I just said is how will you get all the parties on board? Anyone want to wager some thoughts on that?
As far as I'm concerned, the way we've been conducting our life has got us into a bit of a mess. You know, the environment isn't looking too healthy. Climate change is bearing down on us, and it's just vitally important that we've got people in leadership who can work together across the various agencies and just get on with it. So what we need is people who are committed to do this, and that this works. We see from the Wellington example that Brandon has quoted, you know, they managed to extract several billion out of central government because they managed to work together. And so what we need is a sensible idea that gives us a strong way forward, and I believe what we've got here provides that. and get people together and then work with central government on this. But to me, this makes perfect sense. So it's a no-brainer.
I think the thing that worries me is, I see the amount of money that's being spent on public transport in Auckland and Wellington, and we're getting a much smaller share of that. Now, in part, it's our own fault. I don't think the organisations, the local authorities are actually working together and putting forward a coherent plan. And I guess it's not our job at Chat to sort that out, but what we hope to do is to start a conversation about this, to get people starting to think, well, what could it be? Let's not stick with business as usual. We could do better than that. Maybe this is the right scheme, and maybe it's not. But to be honest, there's a lot of work, a lot of water going under the bridge before we know. But let's start those conversations and let's start making those alliances. And at Chat, we just want to be part of that conversation and helping it develop.
Perhaps I'll throw a counter question there. One here is government is notorious for poor delivery of projects. So has the panel considered public-private partnerships as a governance option? Perhaps I'll get Brendan to think on that one.
The development corporations have been used all around the world. Some of them are wholly government owned, some of them are more private. So there is options for that. But I do think that this needs a kind of firm government hand. It needs a lot of coordination. So I'm not so convinced.
Yeah. If I may say something to this as well. I think for this particular part of it, the MARTI part of the hand, we want to probably have this driven by government, because it's a lot easier for ministers in Wellington to say to Kiwi Rail, look, we make this happen, that you shift out where you've got a little bit more space, even if you don't want to. Those kinds of things. To me, that's a key component, because there's so much spatial planning involved. There's so much, as Brendan said, explained earlier, allocating space. Only government can do this. Further down the track, when the high-level master planning stuff has been done, the delivery model could be quite a different one.
Which is probably a nice segue into this question, actually, which I'll get you to lead on. Are there any other sites which have been identified for potential development? Or can you think of some?
I think I kind of mentioned it. To my mind, what's really important about this site is that you can set an example for what can happen along a rail corridor. There's a whole lot of relatively low value, large scale, big box industrial commercial land along Glen Road. Kind of it all happened by a bit of an accident due to a loophole in the district plan. It just happened to allow commercial development on industrial land. And if you zone it right, and if you make if the residential land becomes more valuable, the market will actually change it over. So I don't see it as we have to find lots of these brownfield sites. I think it's more we set a kind of course of action that starts to stimulate change, through the market.
All right, interesting one here, and I guess for those who remember the hand, it all headed out to the west there. And Christian you said MARTI is meant to reduce inequality, but there's nothing out east. So perhaps thinking about those locations, should we be targeting desirable affordable housing in declining areas along the rail corridors, such as Rolleston, for example, rather than perhaps where people already want to live? Any thoughts on that, anyone?
If we get the loop in, then that definitely opens up a corridor out towards Middleton. And a bit like what you said, is that there's already a movement of industrial use out west. the tannery is a private sector example of that. So there's actually already empty industrial warehousing and whatnot in that corridor. But it would only really make sense to be connected once we have the rail loop, because it doesn't really make sense to get on a train from Rolleston to Sydney, basically Colombo Street. But if you could go from Rolleston right into the centre of the city, I think that starts to be quite viable. So that, yeah, there's a lot of potential here.
The elderly can't drive might pop up that way, isn't it?
Yep.
But it's the same rail line. Where it is in Middleton, where it is in Rolleston, it's the same rail line.
Exactly.
Why are we leaving the east behind again? I really don't understand this.
Here's the opportunity for rail yard on that side there.
Yeah.
You've just finished saying there's empty buildings in Rolleston. Why aren't we using that site?
Perhaps
Isn't
we'll.
that more practical?
Yeah.
Because then you can still develop all the way out to the west, but you've gone further east from the starting point, so you've got a better base to build west.
We just picked one example. If someone gives us an example of Woolston, we could do it.
But why don't you start focusing on the west where that's already where the money is? Why would you want to put more people into a dense area rather than revitalise a suburb in decline?
Interesting topic.
Okay, I'll leave with the last question here, looking at the time, and perhaps all of us can have opportunity here. And this is just simply looking at where do we go from here? How can we get this happening now? Someone said this is too important not to get going. So, what is the trick? What's the next step to making this happen? What does everyone think on that?
Yes, sir. The local elections are just around the corner. ECAN is obviously something where there will be a fundamental change, because all the commissioners, 4 commissioners and the one appointed person, they will all go. So to me, ECAN is a very key player in all of this, and it can go from there.
We have to keep reminding local authorities and councils that they need to come to a kind of a greater Christchurch picture. They need to all be banding together to get something, to get a deal with government, I think. So we, in a sense, that's a discussion we need to keep pushing people to have that discussion and to be thinking boldly. Look, at the moment I just hear, let's, more of the same. We're just going to keep on doing what we've always done, and we're going to get what we always got. Let's be thinking a bit boldly, and let's push the barrier out.
From my perspective, I think we need to keep a focus on the vision and on the why. It's very easy to go into the how, and then you start to get all these various arguments. But if you stick with the why, I think the argument's so strong, and if we keep pushing that argument, in particular to the central government politicians, because they're the ones with the funding. We've got a very good story. I think we could make a very good business case for rapid transit in Christchurch. So I think we need to be pushing that vision quite strongly.
Thank you, gents. Do we have a round of applause for our 3 presenters? Okay, so we're just about wrapping up. So we've got one more meaty exercise if you've got any feedback, and this is the number I gave you right at the start, 69 44 44. Okay, so we're really keen on what you thought of tonight. Bit of a different session for us. What did you learn? What did you like? What did you think we missed out on? Anything you disagreed on? Any thoughts for what we should do next as well? We tend to get all sorts of feedback on that, so just type away and then click submit, and we'll keep an eye on those, as well as all the other feedback that you've given us on all the previous questions before as well. Okay, 69, 44, 44. Okay, so we're going to collate that feedback, as I say, throughout all the questions there. I'm not going to collect worksheets because we didn't give any worksheets this week. But what we will do is we'll report back on our usual channels. So if you go and have a look at our Talking Transport website, the Facebook group as well, we'll do a bit of a rundown on how tonight went. We'll give you a chance to see the presentation as well. We'll put a copy of it there if you want to check out any of the details. You've already got access to the reports behind MARTI as well, but we'll put links on those as well if you want to cogitate on them, think a bit more about it from tonight as well. We value your feedback all the time from there. And that's us for tonight. Again, I'll just give you a little reminder about our Give a Little page. Always keen to have any contributions if you think it's worthwhile to help us out. Otherwise, feel free to fill in the Menti form as well, and we'll check the feedback there. Thank you very much for coming along tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Chat Club.